Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Tamp Podcast. In this series, we will be sitting down and discussing in depth all sorts of topics with people from all walks of life, from the worlds of journalism, music and film, the arts, athletes, business people. We plan to sit down and discuss current topics, personal journeys, and bring you what we feel is a nugget of truth in an increasingly surreal world. Stay tuned and watch what we have to offer, and please don't forget to subscribe to our channels. Today we have a very special guest who will be a familiar face or voice to UK viewers or listeners. He is an award-winning journalist, investigative documentary maker, news editor, news reader, author, has worked for the BBC, Al Jazeera, ITV News, is a regular customer here at Tamp, and most importantly of all, a coffee lover. Welcome, Rageh. How you doing?
Thank you very much, Dorian. Very well. Nice to be here.
Thanks for taking the time to join us and to be part of this project. We're giving
Exciting.
it our best shot. I feel I'm interviewing one of the most seasoned interviewers in the UK, and that's kind of slightly daunting.
No.
But we're giving it a shot. There's loads I'd like to discuss and engage in different topics. But I'm going to start with what led us to talk in the first place, which is coffee. If I remember correctly, the first time we spoke, you wanted to get an old lever machine fixed.
I did, yeah. I've got a Pavoni Domus bar, and it's been my pride and joy for about nearly 20 years. And it sort of broke. It kind of, got calcified. I took it to various places, and I thought it was dead. And I just thought, oh no, this is like essential to my mornings, my wife and I getting up, and I can froth the milk really well, and it's really good. But I managed to find a place not very far from here to sort of fix it. The nozzle went, and I just thought it was going to die.
Was it limescale?
I don't know what it was. I just think just wear and tear. I just think, these coffee machines, they have a character, they have a sort of life. And I just sort of think it said one day, do you know what? It's been a beautiful friendship, but it's still alive.
Well, this is the thing with the older machines. What you'll find is that the older the coffee machine, the longer you can keep it going.
Yeah. It's like, we'll talk about classic cars. It's like, there's a proper engine, there's some mechanics, it can be fixed. It's not sort of a digital thing where you just have to chuck the whole thing out.
Well, this is something from the movies for me, but I remember watching TV shows and films when I was growing up, where you'd get the man of the house, the car would break down, he'd lift the bonnet up, look, and he'd know what was what and what needed to be done. I mean, if you opened a car bonnet today, would you know what to do?
No.
Same thing with coffee machines. Importantly, what water did you use in your coffee machine?
I just have a sort of tap that says it's what do you call it? Filtered.
Because we did a little one of our Instagram videos recently on water for coffee, because it's fundamental in order to get the best out of your coffee and to look after your coffee machine, to use the right water.
I just sort of just get it from the tap, put it in, and just think it's just going to go forever.
I recommend bottled water.
Really?
Yes.
Okay.
And the best bottled water out there right now, you won't believe this, Tesco Ashbeck.
Right, I'm going to make
85p for 2 litres.
Okay.
Great job. So you managed to get that fixed. Yeah. And I want to ask, how did you end up with a lever machine? Because even coffee aficionados who have espresso machines, I still don't think I've met anyone else with a lever machine.
I don't know how I got into it. I just walked into this shop in Swiss Cottage, which is, I don't think it's there anymore. And it was like a sort of cornucopia of just coffee machines, and it just looked quite cool. We were going on holiday to Italy a lot, to a particular part of sort of Tuscany. We had this sort of ritual whereby we went into the local village and into the cafe, and there were just these lever machines, and it was just a sort of
They're beautiful.
They're really amazing.
They're beautiful. It's like it was a romantic age of coffee making.
Yeah.
Now it's all become a lot more scientific.
Well, the thing is, it was really interesting. I went to a sort of very well-known department store, and we talked about a particular product, which is Australian. The coffee machine. Everyone seems to sort of have, and you press a sort of button. Amazing, really. But it just kind of took everything. It's not just not about the coffee, is it? It's that's really important, but there's a kind of a ritual to it.
I'm going to say you're a romantic, aren't you?
I am a bit, yeah. I mean, look, don't get me wrong. I couldn't, you were asking about finding out how these sort of machines work. I really don't know. I'm a words guy. I'm not a instruments and machines sort of person. But there's a kind of whole thing to sort of.
But you've managed to keep it alive.
It's kept it alive. Yeah.
And where do you get your coffee?
Well, I get it from and this is not just blowing smoke up your backside. I do get it.
You buy the beans from
I used to get from the Algerian coffee store.
The one on Compton,
Old Compton Street. But there's a sort of organic sort of shop here, the bulk food store.
And they sell coffee as well?
They sell coffee beans. I mean, I get mine in beans, and they've got a bold blend, which is really quite good.
So you've got your own grinder and everything?
Yeah.
What's your go-to coffee drink?
Do you know, it sort of changes. I love a cortado and macchiato, but I mean, going back to the whole Italy thing, just going in, just very short, sharp espresso and a glass of water, and then you go.
I'm definitely an espresso drinker. I used to, back in the day when I started drinking coffee, I started drinking coffee in an Italian coffee shop in Tottenham Court Road. And I would have cappuccinos with sugar. Yeah. And I think just you go through phases.
You do, yeah.
Even here, we've been open 11 years. Customers been coming all this time. And every few years, they have a shift.
Yeah. But it's funny because, I mean, coffee is just so... I mean, obviously, I've reported a lot from the Middle East, and there's Arabic coffee, qahwa, which is, very perfumed. It's got cardamom and so forth, and it's got a big sediment. It's quite sweet. I really like that. But coffee, came from a part of the world where my family are from, sort of Ethiopia, Yemen.
Your coffee history.
Yeah, I mean, it's a sort of a big.
That's exactly where coffee's from.
Yeah,
and it was taken from there to Latin America and other parts of the world where the plants adapted really well. So much so that they're producing outstanding coffee. But it does come from the Yemen, Ethiopia area.
Yeah.
And the coffee culture goes back to that area.
So Somalia, which is where I'm from, is obviously right in between Ethiopia and Yemen. But then it was also colonized by Italy. So you've got that complete virtual triangle between the origins of coffee, Ethiopia, Yemen, and the Italians who were there. So it's kind of, I suppose it's in my bones.
But that makes a lot of sense because it's the Italians who developed the tools to take coffee to where it is today. And they must have had the inspiration from somewhere.
I think that's true. I think tens of thousands of Italians living in that part of the world with this amazing thing, this kind of wonder.
This black syrup.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So they did have the tools, and they're good engineers. I mean, like the Liebherr. I mean, all the coffee machine is sort of Italian.
They are good engineers. However, one caveat is, and I say this as a car fan as well, and I've had several Alfa Romeos in my time, that they are generally better at making things look good than function well.
Yeah.
I mean, anything Italian is just going to be
beautiful.
Gorgeous.
Yeah.
And it goes for their cars. You look at our coffee machines, even the coffee grinders. You look at them and like, wow, someone's actually implemented aesthetic design
that's true.
into a coffee grinder. I mean, who does that?
Exactly. Well, the Liebherr machine. You look at it and you sort of say, this is nuts.
Yeah.
But it's that's true.
So you said you're from Somalia. You were born in Mogadishu
Yeah,
and moved to the UK at the age of 5.
Yeah.
Am I right?
yeah.
Do you have any memories?
Yeah, I've got sort of snapshots. It was very carefree. We lived, in this amazing city, right on the Indian Ocean, went to the beach every day. I just remember there were a lot of sharks. So you'd sort of get in the shallow waters because
It's
it was
dangerous.
it was fairly, yeah. Dangerous in the sense of just teeming with, a predatory life, But that's all I sort of remember of it, really, because obviously Somalia has become, synonymous with, war and failed states and terrorism and violence and all that. That wasn't the sort of Somalia I sort of, grew up in. It's kind of I have a very fond memory of it.
I'm just going to ask a question that I was going to ask later on because it
Mm.
fits in really well with this. Because I was gonna mention. I'll read what I've written down here. Is that since I can remember, going back to the 90s, Somalia has always been in the news for the wrong reasons.
Yeah.
Famine, drought,
Absolutely.
war, political unrest, pirates,
Mm.
even the recent creation of a new country.
Mm.
And so I was going to ask you, can you visualize Somalia as a prosperous country? Now you're describing it
Mm.
as a country that was kind of prosperous.
Yeah.
Do you think there is a way back to that?
It's very difficult because you have now going into 2 generations of people who have never known a state system that isn't functional or ruled by chaos. I mean, there are very, very, very wealthy people in Somalia. They get fuel and sugar and wheat and so forth, and they're wealthy because the state doesn't work. We've all societies have been there. I mean, the one thing I'd sort of say as a sort of journalist is you think the difference between a Somalia or an Afghanistan or whatever else and here in Chiswick is that could never happen. It doesn't take much. It's really very, very thin for people to come along and just say, well, we're not going to have a rules-based system. We're just going to have, you know, um, warlords and, this and that. So it's become so ingrained that, but never say never. I mean, I lived, in South Africa shortly after the end of apartheid, and I sort of, you'd sort of think, well, this is going to carry on forever. So nothing is permanent. But right now, I think those kind of, inflection points take remarkable people to come along, sort of a Mandela, a Martin Luther King, a Gandhi, whatever, just to sort of say there is a different way.
One more thing I wanted to ask you with regards to Somalia is your journey from Somalia to the UK. How difficult was it to adapt?
It wasn't. It was a real adventure. I mean, it took 3 days to get here.
Yeah.
So we left Mogadishu. There was a change of plane in Khartoum in Sudan. Then we went to Rome, and then there was a layover. I mean, the idea of taking a plane journey that is 3 days will sound very strange to anyone under the age of 40.
Yeah.
But no, it was just a big adventure. What I really remember is just all the artificial lights.
Yeah.
So I grew up, in Africa under where night was night, blue skies, a few sort of street lighting, and then coming in those neon lights, man, in Trafalgar Square and Piccadilly. That was so. I remember the sort of just a different sense of sort of color
And the technological difference between
difference,
the countries.
Yeah.
Moving on a little bit into journalism,
Mhm.
you graduated from Oxford University. Where did you start your journalism career? Can you tell me a little bit about the early days?
Yeah, I did no journalism at university or school. But I grew up in a family that were all news junkies. So my journey into journalism happened around the kitchen table. We were talking about what was happening in the Middle East, and mentioned South Africa, and all these incredible places. It just sort of filled my head with a desire to actually go and witness sort of history. And that cliche, which is a cliche, but is also true about journalism being the first draft of history. So I came from a culture that was based on nomads. So Somalis are nomads. They travel and go everywhere. So that was already, and I had lots of uncles and aunts and cousins who left Africa to go and work, during the oil boom in the 70s and 80s in the Middle East. And they would come back and talk about what it was like to be in Saudi Arabia, flying to Iran under the. So I just thought, wow, this is amazing. I need to do something like this.
So it was almost the desire, like a hunger to get to know the world.
Yes, it was absolutely. Yeah.
And journalism became the path to achieve that.
I think that's absolutely right. And the other thing that was because I very nearly became a lawyer, but someone said to me, I can't remember who it was, sort of said, the one thing that's really interesting about journalism is it's a continual education. Who knew anything about Ukraine until 2022? And then, do you see what I mean? There's always different stories and cultures and themes to sort of, so it feels like a sort of university forever or school forever.
Now, I recently found out that you interviewed Nelson Mandela.
Yes, I did.
Wow.
Yeah.
Can you tell me about that? I mean, when was that? What was it like?
That was in 2015. And I think it was one of the last interviews he did. And it was at his house and the head office of his foundation. And with my very good friend, sort of a long-standing BBC cameraman, Glenn Middleton. He'd interviewed Nelson Mandela lots of times. And every time Glenn went, he wore those Mandela shirts, those very flowery sort of shirts. And Mandela goes, "Oh, hello, how are you? You're wearing one of my shirts." So I was like, sort of, okay, how do you prep for something like this? But the one thing I would say that was amazing is that when you meet, and interview people who have got even a fraction of his life story, you sort of expect hundreds of pictures. Here's me with the president of this and the Pope, and he had no pictures at all. It was not. He didn't care about that. He did have one cartoon because I think Britain was trying to get his support for hosting the World Cup, and David Beckham had been out. So there was a cartoon from the Sowetan newspaper, from Soweto Township, and in it there's just a young black kid with his father looking at the TV, and in the TV is David Beckham and Nelson Mandela. And there's a little speech bubble coming out of the kid's mouth. Said, "Dad, who's that old guy with David Beckham?" I just thought that just sort of summed him up completely.
It makes me think about, I mean, obviously I grew up and we had Nelson Mandela as such a big, powerful presence, inspirational presence while I was at school, even through my university days. And I'm trying to think, it's like there's been a void since he's left us. And I something that has come up in several other podcasts is inspiration for young people today. And when someone like Nelson Mandela leaves us, it does leave this void, which today I think there is no one.
Yeah, it's very hard. Yeah. I know what you mean.
I mean, today what have we got? Andrew Tate and Joe Rogan and this. I can't think of anyone who's kind of has that emotional, guided, grounded strength.
I think it's a really interesting point about what life stories inspire you? And if, we'll get onto it in a bit, but if your life's story is formulated on ephemeral moments on sort of social media and you capture a sort of a following, it's really, really difficult to have, 27 years, in a prison and, come out and feel, I'm going to forgive the people who did that. It's really difficult.
Which makes me a little bit concerned for basically everyone
Yeah.
today.
Yeah.
And I'm a victim myself. The amount of time I find myself spending on social media on my phone.
Yeah.
And I mean, for me, my worry is having a little daughter is what world is she going to grow up in? Where is her Nelson Mandela?
I think the one thing, I keep coming back to is that's all true. But even when you go to places that are um, uh, racked by conflict and confusion, people sort of say, oh, it must be awful, going, to the places you go to. And you sort of think, to some extent, but you see the best of people as well. It's not just, people doing horrible things. It's also just, really heroic things. So they people do emerge out of, these, we sort of, think of the world being in total flux and uh, uh, a whole bunch of grifters who are seizing the limelight. But I'm actually much more optimistic than you'd think.
I can relate to that
Mm.
in a tiny fraction of a way. But when I was early 20s, I did my first backpacking trip around Brazil. Um, and that was life changing for me. And I remember the impact of seeing favelas for the first time in my life. Little did I know that I would end up spending a lot of time in the favelas, working in the favelas, doing social projects in the favelas. These places which, until I had been there, were, you'd heard about drug lords, machine guns, firefights, until I'd been there, and you realize the people living there are amazing. Yeah, there's some scum. There's some real scum.
Yeah.
Can't deny that.
Yeah.
But you also see really strong, grounded people that I would say I struggle to find people like that around me here in London.
Yeah. Because that's how 99% of people around the world live. That's the normalcy. It's not
Chiswick.
It's not Chiswick. That's the abnormal.
Yeah. In terms of your journalism and work, what would you say you feel is your greatest achievement or what you're most proud of?
Crikey. Very hard to sort of say. I I'm not someone who sort of pinpoints particular sort of things and moments. There are certain things that will always be associated with, the invasion of Iraq and the fall of Saddam Hussein and so forth. But there's lots of other things that have been impactful. I always think the next story is always the best one.
I like that.
Mm.
I do. So less highs, lower highs and higher lows.
Yeah. Very good. Yeah.
Moving on to a little bit of freedom of speech, should we say? How hard is it for a journalist to be fully impartial without the pressure of bias of whichever platform they may be on?
I have an issue with this issue of impartiality or journalistic neutrality. Look, I mean, we all go into situations with our own makeups and biases and viewpoints and so forth. If you and I went today to Sudan or Gaza or whatever else, we could both see exactly the same thing, interview the exact same people, but it would be Dorian's view of Sudan or Gaza, or Ragheh's view. There's no sort of template. So this is exactly how it is. So um, you try and report as fairly as you can, in spite of all those sort of advices. So this whole sort of thing that there's complete impartiality is nonsense. It's never been the case.
I get it, because it's impossible for anything to be impartial if it's written by someone, because whoever wrote it is going to be
They'll be
swaying.
moved, or by the people they meet, or the things that they saw, or even something in their sort of makeup.
Well, I was going to say, it actually goes beyond that. It could go further, as to someone might interpret something depending on how they grew up,
Yeah,
which might mean that you and I might see the same thing and
Yeah.
come up with completely different interpretations.
Totally different interpretation. But I think everyone knows in their heart of hearts when someone, he or she, is trying to report on an event with as much balance as they can. But of course, everyone's going to sort of have a sort of viewpoint, sort of saying, well, they're pro this or anti that. But yeah.
And news forms, do you think it's important where we get our news from?
Yeah, if I sort of go back a bit, actually, so you sort of said about how difficult is it for journalists to sort of, look, the lifeblood of journalism is access. And so therefore, if someone doesn't like the way you're reporting things, the militia, the government, the political party just says, oh, well, we just don't like the way Ragheh's reporting. We might just not give him the sort of access. And then your editors say, geez, it's the opposition is getting all this kind of do you see what I mean? So there are always levers of control that you have to try and find a way around.
But at the same time, that could go the other way, because you might then report in a certain way in order just to maintain access.
Yeah, that can do. Yeah. Well, I mean, the client journalism is a thing.
Yeah.
Dorian, hey, look, you're going to get the big interview with so and so. Oh, really? Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah.
So, but that's also a thing that you have to be aware of.
Yeah, I believe it. Especially doing my fast track learning into this. Because I was going to talk to you about Substack in comparison to mainstream media, which a customer here told me about. I've only just scratched the surface, but from my understanding, it's a platform where journalists can write at free will, should we say?
Yeah.
And people subscribe to write to their journalism.
I've seen a number of people, quite household sort of names, who've started their own Substack. I'm very early to it, so I will go away after this chat with you and look at stuff. But I think that's a sort of it's a move towards people wanting to have an ability to, because also it's not a sort of fangled thing, is it? It's quite bare bones.
Yeah.
There's no, oh, I'm on X or Instagram.
No. It's people who are writing there because of the journalists or because of the content, and they want that opinion. It's not. There's no beautiful dressing on the outside.
No, that's interesting.
Now, I'm curious in terms of getting news, and I think something that happens today a lot, especially because of social media, especially with the younger generations, is this whole, and it's something which I'm going to refer to as a term you used for a different scenario in a bit. But we do get stuck in echo chambers, and we kind of fall into these, I guess, spaces where we only surround ourselves by people who think like us, and we only hear people that say things we want to hear.
Yeah.
Firstly, do you think there's a danger in that?
Yeah.
And how do you stop that from happening? You need to proactively listen to stuff you don't like, read things you wouldn't normally read.
Yeah.
I mean,
talking to people and hearing stories from, look, where I've gone to has always been places that are angry with, at conflict with the society I live in, the West. So you have to go and talk to, quote unquote, the other side and hear their stories and so forth. So I don't really see what the problem with that is and why other people don't want to sort of
I think I'm
do
just
that.
referring to
Yeah.
the youth,
Yeah,
who might
yeah,
be
yeah,
feeling,
yeah.
who basically a lot of young people who are not watching the news. They're getting all of their news from YouTube
Yeah,
or
yeah,
Instagram,
yeah,
and YouTube and Instagram algorithms feed them the same stuff all the
yeah,
time.
yeah. Could
Ha-
reconfirm reaffirmation
and
of.
then that in turn wires their
Mm,
viewpoint,
mm.
and it's something that
It's
worries me.
it is a worry. It's really really difficult. Even when I try and research sort of stories, and suddenly I find things popping up on my sort of
Yeah.
Twitter
All
feed
all the
because
cookies and
yeah
algorithms that are
yeah
watching
yeah
everything you do,
that's just really bizarre.
and I don't know how.
It's very difficult, Dorian. It's really difficult. I mean, in fact, one of the things about working with and trying to sort of mentor, the next generation of sort of journalists is just pick up the phone and talk to someone. But because the whole sort of, default is to open up a computer and Google something or look on, but the idea of just because journalism is really about stories and talking to people, but there's just such a tsunami of as you say, uh, curated and targeted viewpoints.
I think dangerously so online.
Mm.
I'm the same as you. I might
Mm.
search for something and then I'll suddenly get something pop up on my Instagram,
Yeah.
and it's kind of scary because I feel basically there are giant algorithms
Mm.
behind anything that I touch that's digital, and the only safe space is, for example, this
Yeah.
sitting down talking to you,
Yeah.
people I chat to in my shop.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I think the reason I think about this is because I'm a new father, and I try and think, how do you prepare someone
Yeah.
to grow in the world that we're now entering? Because my child's going to be 20, and I'm not going to know what world this is going to be
No.
by that time.
Yeah.
And so you think, what do you need to teach them?
Yeah.
And I guess that's the basis of my thinking.
Yeah. But someone said to me once, when our kids, I mean, I've got kids in their 20s, that, in 20 years' time, they'll turn by and say, how did you guys, you and me, our generation, do you remember those platforms where you could just, look at, this horrible, racist, child pornography and you could buy guns? How did you guys allow that to happen? So I really do think, uh, there have been these other sort of technologies or products and humanity's come out of the, and I really do think there will be, because, how did you guys ever allow that to sort of happen? How did we have these, you gave us, I remember, Dad, you giving me my first sort of iPhone and I could just suddenly look at all this stuff. What were you thinking?
I just want to go back to, for example, your coverage. You mentioned you are very well known for the Iraq War coverage. You once described the coverage of the Iraq War as a giant echo chamber, and that you said yourself you didn't press the uncomfortable buttons enough.
Yeah.
What would you have done differently today?
I think perhaps just follow my gut instincts. Just certain things just didn't seem to sort of stack up, but it was a big, echo chamber. That's the problem which was with 24-hour news broadcasting. It's moved on much, with booster rockets now because of social media. When you have something that's put out in TV channels, web feeds, social media, and it's based on a partial truth. Once it goes out into that echo chamber, the journalism needed to be able to go and actually track that down to see, was that really the case? So, I mean, I just remember talking to a very senior British, military spokesman who was in charge of briefing the media in Basra, which is in the south of sort of Iraq. Basra was important because it was a gateway to the sort of the Gulf out of and also the border with Kuwait and the oil fields. It was reported to have fallen, I think, 11 times before Basra. So when you go back, to try and say, well, has Basra really fallen? By the time you've actually researched it and come up with the truth, which is it hasn't fallen, doesn't matter. It's already out there.
And do you think that one of the problems with that is actually speed of information passing itself?
Speed and immediacy. Yeah.
Because, as you said, once something's sent, you can't unsend it.
Yeah.
And I think I wanted to ask you whether you think I mentioned this earlier, I'm going to ask it now, whether you think we are getting maybe too much news too fast right now.
Yeah. Yes. But there's almost no point thinking about that because those are the tools in front of us. But I guess the really difficult sort of question is, how do we find alternative tools to have a more sort of considered reportage? And that's why I wanted to sort of do documentaries, because they live longer. It's not sort of ephemeral or, and there are some absolutely unbelievable, stuff I've sort of seen that do take years. They take years to do, but then you have this incredible archive. I mean, if anyone, I've just recently watched and recommend the Ken Burns documentary on the Vietnam War. The Vietnam War ended, 30 plus years ago, but it's just an incredible. Another film I saw about Western intervention in the Congo and how Louis Armstrong was used by the CIA to do a jazz concert in Congo.
You're kidding me.
No, I know. This is just the most unbelievable thing. So these things, they do garner, audiences.
I just watched I forgot his name. Documentary. His name's just gone. Big time film director, and he did a documentary on the Black Hawk Down.
Oh yes, yeah.
I don't know if you saw that.
Yes, I did.
It wasn't James Cameron. It was one of these big directors.
Yeah.
And I found that fascinating. Yeah. And they tracked down both sides.
Yeah.
And they actually found people who were even firing at each other and interviewing both sides now.
Yeah. But those stand the test of time.
Amazing. It reminds me actually of one documentary, and I can't remember for the life of me who made it, about the Falklands War, which means something to me because I was born during the war, and I'm half English, half Argentinian.
Okay.
So it was a thing for us. And I remember, was it Simon West?
Yes.
Simon Weston, the soldier who had his face burned.
Yes, yeah, exactly.
Where he met the pilots.
Okay, that bombed
who bombed the ship
in which he was on.
That's powerful.
Okay, now I will watch that.
And they end up hugging.
Yeah. I'll watch that.
I remember. So I'm a fan of documentaries. Yeah. And in a way, you're right. It's almost, a documentary can almost be more truthful with the test of time.
Yeah.
Because it's looking back.
Yeah.
It can research better.
Yeah.
Because it's not under pressure to launch it tomorrow.
No, exactly.
Put it live on TV tomorrow.
Yeah.
So what advice would you give to any aspiring journalist today? I know you said earlier, pick up the phone.
Journalism really is about human stories. So sitting down with people, hearing their sort of thing, going back to talk to them again, that's really quite sort of important. And also, I guess, trust your instincts. Something doesn't feel right. Someone's, not quite being straight with you. You always have a sense, right? We all have a sense. So, yeah, those two things.
Sounds to me like you're simply saying relationships.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. Fundamentally, that's what it is.
That's what I'm hearing when you say pick up the phone, talk to people, get to know them, see them again. Essentially, that's it's almost what humanity's about.
Yeah, it's connections with people.
Something I wanted to ask you. We all got shocked when we saw you fall ill live on TV.
Yeah.
Can you tell us what happened, and are you okay?
I'm absolutely fine. Thank you for asking. It was just a brief episode. I didn't really know what was sort of happening, but I'm absolutely fine.
Good.
It was, so I've had the
Because I remember I knew you at that time.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't say we were speaking terms that much, but I knew you were coming here.
I think
and then I saw
within
it,
a
and
few
I was
days
like,
of
I'm
it.
like, shit, is he okay? Yeah, we were talking a few days before. I think.
Yeah. You gave me a bag of coffee beans.
Did I?
Yeah.
I don't remember. Probably bribery for the interview. Do you know who Arthur Kent is?
No.
Yes, just a little bit of fun here, but you two are the only journalists ever to have been nicknamed Scud Studs.
Oh, that's where it's from. And he was from the first Gulf War.
He was from the first Gulf War. And you were from the second, and you were given the nickname Scud Studs as a result of your live broadcast.
Oh, that's funny. I ought to try and find him on social media.
Yeah. I was told to ask you about the time your wife rang you asking for the password. And I was told that you would know what I'm talking about.
Yeah. I was in Iraq, and I was at the hotel where journalists were staying, and it was hit by an American tank. And there were a number of journalists who were sort of wounded, and it was all quite chaotic, and it was the last days when the city was really sort of on edge. And my very good friend, Paul Danaher, who's the bureau chief for the BBC, said, look, all this stuff is live on air, our families might have been watching, everyone get on the phone and call, your immediate relatives. So I called my wife, called my brother, and I said to my wife, Nina, I said, look, everything's fine, everything's really good. And she just sort of, okay, that's cool, fine. Clearly she wasn't watching the TV, thank God. And she said, look, I feel really crap about asking you this, but Barclaycard have cut off our credit card because you forgot to pay the direct debit or whatever. And I was like, oh shit, yeah, okay, let me, so I had to get back on the satellite phone to call Barclaycard to unblock the card. So that was, these kind of very weird, bizarre sort of moments. And then I remember being put through to a call center in South India. So I was in Baghdad trying to get my card unblocked.
Well, this building's...
Well, the building had been hit.
Collapsed.
Yeah.
Wow. Something which is a subject, I should say, which is new to me, important to me. So I can always do with all the advice I can get, but I like to ask other people's experiences of it, is fatherhood.
Yeah.
And I know you're a father. And what I'd like to ask firstly is what does fatherhood mean to you?
Gosh, I think I think we all feel it's kind of the main reason why we're here on this planet and this amazing journey of life. We just try and do the best we can. Sometimes it doesn't work. Sometimes kids are sort of annoyed at us, angry at us.
Sometimes we're annoyed at them.
Exactly, yeah. I think, parenthood is viewed as, I'm going to get this absolutely right. Because you're always looking back to your relationship with your parents. And it might have worked, it might not have worked. They might have been around, they might not have been around, whatever. But there's no getting it right, is there, really? I mean, you just try and do your best. But I think it's just an amazing journey.
Just about 2 years ago, I became a father for the first time, and it drastically shifted my perspective on the world and values. And I wonder what impact that may have had on you at your time doing your work, and if it had any impact on your ability to carry out your work. For example, I just imagine, one thing is, being in the middle of a war zone without kids, or either as a bachelor or with a partner.
Yeah, but I look back and I sort of think, what the hell were you doing going to these places?
You think that?
Yeah, now I just think, you lunatic. Why were you going there? Because it was about, well, this was my career and I was, getting this big position and so forth. And it sort of seems like I really was lucky that I was able to come back. But also the other thing is, it's really difficult now that they're grown to let go. I think that's what, and it goes really quickly.
I'm not there yet.
I know you're not there, but it'll go really quickly. Your daughter, right? I mean, how old is she now?
She's going to be 2 in July.
2, right? She'll be 18 before you know it, which is fantastic. But I think part of the thing is just sort of letting go. Weird things come back, like the first time my daughter got on the bus to school on her own. Like, now she's halfway across the world, in Vietnam and Cambodia and LA, and it just sort of, it seems to come. So part of the thing about parenthood is having this wonderful, grasping, you just want to sort of hug them and eat them, but it's also just about letting go.
I'm on that journey. We'll see how it works out. But I find it fascinating you say when you think, what was I doing? What was I doing going to the place? Because I feel that answers my question. Do you think fatherhood shifted that perspective?
Yeah, very much. You look, looking, hindsight's a wonderful thing. And, why was I away so long? Why did I concentrate on this, the work, but it was important to me at the time. But I look back on it sort of thinking, you idiot, why did you prioritize certain things? But you have to.
But there's no way you can know that.
Exactly.
And it's like trying. I had this discussion with someone the other day, trying to describe fatherhood to someone who didn't have kids, and it made me realize it's like before you've got kids, you can't comprehend. So therefore,
it's like landing on a different planet.
Yes, and you also can't explain it to someone.
No, it's very difficult.
Because like someone would say to me before I became, well, they find out I was going to become, you're going to feel everything's going to change. Oh, what are you talking about? Is it really? And then shit.
It really does. Yeah.
Okay, this is real. This shit's for real. This is
exactly.
And it's for life.
Yeah, it's for life.
It's interesting what shifts it does and pushes you, and then all sorts of emotional challenge, economic, financial challenges, everything. Yeah. But then that kind of leads you to experiment.
Your kids will never really know what it takes to raise someone, because how could you describe it?
You can't, and you can't. You'd be foolish to expect someone could imagine it.
No, yeah, exactly.
Thank you very much. Rageh.
Well, it's been a real pleasure. Thank you very much indeed.
I do have one question, and this is just for fun for you if you want, and it's not part of the podcast. Do you want to go on a coffee machine?
Yeah, why not? Yeah.
If you like this episode, please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to our YouTube channel, as we will be having weekly episodes launching.